Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of the Me Kevin Show. Today we got to talk about the Bitcoin ETF near approval. We got to talk about Trump getting actually a gag order, and we knew that one, but he got fined for it finally. We'll see what we think about that. Did he deserve it or not? Israel-Palestine updates. What's going on with the hostages and oil deliveries, and why are news agencies taking their live blogs down? What's happening? We'll talk about that. We'll also talk about some free speech issues, Tesla, and more. Let's get into it. First, really finding it interesting, Deliveroo gets 10,000 job applications a week. That's the food delivery service based out of the United Kingdom. What's happening? Are people just trying to get more money, or are people out of money? Are people like, I got extra time? I mean, we always talk about this. It's like, if you sleep 8 hours a day, you got an extra 114 hours a week. What are you doing with that time? You got a 40-hour a week job. So you got plenty to drive and do some deliveries. What do you think? Is this tough economic times? Got to fill those pockets up again?
It could be going back to school. I know a lot of students like to do the delivery things with their extra time because they can't have a full-time job and they can't necessarily commit to part-time job hours. So it's like the late-night deliveries and things like that. So now that we're back in the swing of school season, maybe now we're getting closer to the holidays. People are like, I'm going to earn some extra cash for Christmas for my family or whatever.
It's a good idea. I didn't even think about that. I remember when I went to high school, I had to request a special 4-hour shift schedule because, after school, how much time do you actually have? You want to work, but it's hard to. Here, you make your own hours. Yeah. Kind of like with Uber or whatever. That's really interesting. Okay, that's a good point. Could be that. So back to school. What do you think, Mikey?
Yeah, that's actually a really good point because I was going to say it's usually not someone's first job. No one's wanting to work at food delivery as their priority. It's usually I'll do this until I find something else.
Get some extra money and do this as a bridge. Yeah. American Express, I read their earnings call, but they just reported on Friday. They're talking about consumer spending, specifically from their millennial and Gen Z cohort, but consumer spending up 9% in the U.S. year over year. Inflation on average this year has been 4.5%, 5%. So you still have this positive 4.5%, 4-ish% of spending increase that's happening. Is that because people are working for Deliveroo? Or I guess here Uber Eats or something?
Yeah, no, it could totally. I know a lot of my friends do it when they are, especially in school. Most of my college friends do some sort of side gig, whether it be grocery delivery or grocery delivery tends to be more profitable than food delivery, and it's less fickle.
Why?
So, just because it's bigger orders, bigger price tickets. Instead of a $40 Panda Express order, you're getting a $150 grocery from a mom that has 2 kids that can't leave the house.
And then they're thinking 10 or 20% tip on obviously a higher value item. Yeah. Interesting. And those grocery ones, I think there's probably a lot less order complaining in grocery. Don't get me wrong. I bet if you do a $150 order, there's probably $10 that gets aside for every order for just mess ups. But you mess up somebody's dinner, it's all or nothing, man.
Yeah, they are hungry and cranky already.
Yeah, I'm hungry. You forgot the sauce. All $40 refund request.
Yeah, I've seen it.
Yeah. Okay, good. So what do we got? It looks like we're starting off here with Jim Jordan. What happened here?
He lost again.
That's a surprise.
Is Kevin McCarthy going to come back? Is that would that even remotely be a possibility? Is it, even though it seems like people love to hate him, he was the one person that actually got the votes, and apparently out of these other 217 people, there's just nobody in the Republican House that could lead this group.
I think the Dems messed up a little bit. It was kind of a weird flex that they did, and now that everyone's suffering for it.
That's a good point. Because if you think about it, the Dems had a neutral Republican speaker.
Yes.
Right? And the Dems control the presidency and the Senate, which means as long as you can get something done with a neutral guy in the House, you could slam anything else you want through the Senate and the presidency, because your one roadblock is the Republican House. But if your roadblock has a neutral guy in place, great. You get Matt Gaetz or whatever in, nothing's going to get done. You've just lost your third branch, so to speak. And I don't want to confuse that with branches, legislative, executive, and courts. But think of it as the 3 branches of the political control, even though courts have gotten politicized. The 3 branches of political control: the House, the Senate, presidency. Yeah, you're right. Maybe the Dems just screwed up big time, because they were frustrated, at least some were saying, that you had McCarthy slamming Democrats on 60 Minutes. And every Democrat watches 60 Minutes every Sunday.
That's true.
So everybody's like, well, we'll show you. But it's kind of like biting off your nose to spite your face. That's interesting.
Yeah.
Wow, that's a really good analogy. Okay, so who's going to run this? We have no idea. I guess so. Nobody's really leading right now, eh?
Nobody's leading, but we had 9 candidates as of this weekend, and then yesterday one dropped out. I have got the other 8 on my screen if you want to see their precious little faces.
Let's see it. Yeah, let's pull it up. Oh, there they are, Axios. They're a good publication. I like them. So there they are. Wow, look at that. See, the problem is, I don't know that any of these people, quite frank, I think most of the people watching this video are going to look at this and go, these people are in Congress?
Yeah, I don't know. I don't even know who they are.
Yeah. So, that's a problem when you're trying to unite the entire Republican Party. So, okay, speaking of Republican Party, what about the unspoken leader of the Republican Party? I heard he just got fined and some more attorney drama.
Oh, yeah. Donnie Trump.
Donnie T.
Donnie Trump. He had that the partial gag order that we'd been talking about. And so the judge was basically like, hey, you can't be talking crap about people in my court, because he was saying that the clerk was like the girlfriend of, was it the judge or something like
Chuck
that?
Schumer.
Oh, it was Chuck Schumer. And so he was like, you can't talk crap about my court, and that's it. So he deleted I guess it's called a truth from Truth Social.
The post, okay.
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
But it turned out he never deleted it from his website. It was deep in the Donald J. Trump website. And so the judge found out about it on Thursday, issued a notice to the lawyer. The lawyer took it down. But then on Friday, they were talking about it, and basically Trump got fined $5,000 because it was still on the website.
Yeah, wow.
Totally worth it for Trump. A $5,000 fine.
I mean, again, now people are talking about him. Oh, Trump got fined. But you know that $5,000 probably turns into $500,000 in campaign donations.
Yep.
I'd be like, find me again.
Yeah.
Hit me again, baby.
Yeah. And she threatened it. Oh, if you do something like this again, we're going to fine you again. Like, the repercussions are so minor.
Please.
Yeah.
Yeah. Trump's lawyer said this was inadvertent. And to their credit, I kind of believe them. They were like, it was deep in the website. They called it the back pages. Like, we just didn't know about it.
Sure.
So it's not a big of a deal as people think.
It's probably like a Truth Social feed that posts to their website, and then maybe it doesn't delete from there. Once it pulls it in, it doesn't update it afterwards.
Yeah,
I could
totally
see that making
likely.
sense. Also interesting, you had the third, actually, no, this is now the 4th guilty plea that Atlanta has secured from former associates or attorneys of Donald Trump in the Georgia case. The last attorney here now is Jenna Ellis. She's 38. She just pled guilty to violation. She could face up to 5 years of probation, fines. I think it's $5,000 of fines as well, which is a lot more for an individual person compared to the Trump campaign. And then all of them are basically agreeing to testify against Donald Trump. Ellis actually went as far as saying, if I knew then what I know now, I would have declined to represent Trump. What I did not do or should have done was make sure that the facts others alleged to be true or false back then, basically, before she took the job. So kind of trying to distance herself from, hey, shouldn't have worked with them, but I did. I got stuck. You know, it sounds a lot like what's going on in the Sam Bankman-Fried trial, where you have Carolyn arguing that, I was romantically in love. I fell into the trap. I was a victim. I was convinced by his charm or this, that, or whatever. What's really wild is that this 4th attorney who just pled guilty actually hit me up a lot during my campaign for governor in California. She, because, I'm running against Gavin Newsom, and I was getting like all the Republicans from all angles DMing me like, oh, here's a story, look into this. And it was so hilarious because people just wanted somebody to light a fire under Gavin Newsom, and they're like, Kevin can do it. So she's like, hey, I'm the former attorney for Donald Trump. And I'm like, this is such a small freaking world. Yeah. And she was really nice in DMs. And she'd be like, hey, here's a story you might look into and research this, that. And none of it ever seemed like pressured, or there was it just seemed like it almost feels like if somebody's fighting your enemy, Gavin Newsom, then everybody who is also enemies with Gavin Newsom is now your friend. Yeah. It's really kind of funny in politics how that is.
I do think it's only the 3rd attorney who's pled guilty.
The 3rd, okay, yeah, that's what I thought. That's what I thought. The 3rd,
man.
But if Bloomberg here saying state prosecutors in Atlanta secured a 4th guilty plea, so I wonder if one of them has had like a double plea or something like that. So because I when I read the story this morning as well, I thought it was the third person. So maybe there's a fourth plea or something like that. But good clarification there. So something to be figured out.
Georgia's really not messing around with this. Georgia's going all the way.
Well, this is a smart way to do it because if you think about it, if you're going for like the head and you basically tie up all of the arms to then fight the head, that's the way to do it. But if everyone is united together, then it's very hard for a jury to say, oh, Donald Trump was at fault when everybody's like, no, we did nothing wrong.
Oh, Trump's already backpedaling. If you want to see my screen here.
Please, yeah.
This is regarding Sidney Powell, which was one of the attorneys from last week. And this is Trump on Truth Social.
Is it fair? Is she the one people say is like the crazy one who is always on social media with, Rudy Giuliani? People always made fun of her. Like these are Sidney Powell. Let me clarify this in case people don't know the context. Sidney Powell was the one Tucker Carlson called a nut job.
Wow.
So just to clarify on Sidney Powell, when Tucker Carlson calls someone a nut job. Anyway, that was from the transcripts that came out from the Fox and Dominion lawsuit. Anyway, let's see what do we got here.
Yeah, Trump says that Powell's one of the millions and millions of people who thought that the election was rigged. But an interesting point here, he goes, despite the fake news reports to the contrary, and without even reaching out to ask the Trump campaign, Ms. Powell was not my attorney and never was.
Wow.
It's really interesting because I found this tweet on X back before he was banned, and he said, I look forward to Mayor Giuliani spearheading the legal effort to defend our right to free and fair elections. Rudy Giuliani, Joseph Genova, Victoria Tunzing, and Sidney Powell.
And there's Jenna.
And Jenna Ellis, a truly great team added to our wonderful lawyers and representatives.
Nice. That's a good find.
I mean, that's a really good find. I mean, this is just Trump. Like everybody knows, like, when he says it's the greatest thing ever, it's the best thing ever, it's all marketing. And it's like when he's the sad thing is, like, you have to admit that's not very presidential. But people are like, well, neither is Congress. Well, neither is the government the way it is. And so you need somebody like that to go, fight the dirty fight, so to speak, in dirty ways or whatever ways it takes. It's really interesting.
If you're Trump, are you starting to worry about how serious they're taking all of his lawyers going down? Or is he concerned? Or do you think he's applauding it?
That Donald Trump, deep down inside, feels that he is like a martyr. That no matter what, he is doing the absolute best thing for the country. I know it. Like, there's part of me that's like, he has to know. He has to know when he's saying bullshit. Like, he has to know. But I think he's gone so far down this rabbit hole of politics that he's convinced himself that he is running because, God wants it, the people want it, whatever it is, and that he's going to say anything he needs to do to defend himself now just to get one step further. He's really doing the shield analogy that we always talk about, which is just like, you put up the shield, you're going to get attacked, and as long as one foot's going in front of the other, you're winning. And I think that's really what he's doing. Now, some of that, like what you just showed, it exemplifies flailing, right?
Yeah.
A little bit. It's kind of like, it's not targeted. He has a more incoherent strategy because there's so many things that weaken his strategy like that. That doesn't look good. Doesn't look good for anyone. So, I don't know. I mean, what am I missing?
He's just adding, like we talk about it quite frequently, he's just adding more chaos to the whole mix. It's just like, he just says one thing here and like everybody pays attention to it, then he does another thing over here and just like, he's never going, like he's never quiet.
That's part of his attention-getting mechanism. That's why he pulls so much ahead of all these other folks. I mean, look at like Vivek had a storm there after the first Republican debate, but now you never hear about him anymore. Mm-hmm. He's not the focus of attention right now. It's Trump, and it's stuff like this that gets everyone talking about Trump and not the ideas of people like Pence or Vivek.
And here's something really interesting. Although it'd be terrible what's happening with Israel and Palestine, Biden's been in front of the camera more than he has been in the last 6 months.
Well, as he should be.
And he should be. But like, it's kind of a double-edged sword for him. He's doing his presidential duties while also running, getting ready for his campaign. Like, everybody's seeing him. He's on every news outlet, Fox, CNN, you name it, he's there.
When's the last time you tuned into a Biden press conference? Certainly before the Israel thing, like never, like they're boring, right?
Yeah.
But during the Israel, it's like, address to the nation, we got to watch.
Even here in the office, like Biden's talking to everybody, TV's on, like, what's he going to say about the conflict this time? Yeah.
Yep. It is interesting. I actually think I'm surprised, by Donald Trump's quietness on the Israel issue, because it's a disaster. And I would expect a little bit more commentary from him. But he really focuses a lot on the election. And I think he's purposely trying to stay out of this because it's almost like a lose-lose to comment on these sort of kind of conflicts. So that's very interesting. On top of the fact that you've got the Biden administration, they're really pulling in the reins on Israel on this idea of, they definitely need a ground invasion. How many days in a row has the ground invasion been 1 day away? Like for the last 2 weeks.
Yeah.
It's every day. It's like, it's the invasion's coming. It's 1 day away. I really think you've got the Biden, and there were some great pieces on this as well, but it seems to be a consensus. The consensus now is focus on hostage rescues. Focus on aid to the region. And you have an update on aid, right?
Hostages and aid.
Let's talk about that. Yeah, that's it.
Yeah, so they released, just this weekend, they released 2 additional hostages, and that brings their total up to 4. Initially, they had released a mother and daughter. I think those were American. And just now they released 2 older ladies. One was 79, one was 85. Presumably their husbands are still captured. I actually do have a video that I'll pull up here in a second of one of the hostages. And
who says she was beaten but then treated well.
Yeah.
It's interesting. Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if at first, I think Israel's response was so underestimated by Hamas that if you're Hamas right now and you see the destruction that you've basically been responsible for in the Gaza Strip, you're like, we done effed up. This is which is the point. That was the point Israel's trying to make, is you mess with us, this is what we're going to do to you. To some extent, as much as I entirely disagree with the killing of civilians, and there's no justification for that, to some extent, the leveling of the Gaza Strip that you're seeing and the destruction you're seeing is a giant warning sign to all of the surrounding countries too, even Iran. It's like, you want to mess with Israel? We have all the funding we need from America because they get the money printer. We got all their weapons, and we will send them all to your doorstep.
Yeah, I think Israel got put in an interesting predicament where the invasion, basically, if they invade, Hezbollah is threatening that they'll attack Israel on the other side. And Israel's like, is it really worth an all-out war? Rather than just a response, they're inciting an entire war, not only on another country, but they have to defend their own country again on the other side.
Right, and then that's where I think the purse strings matter a lot here, where it doesn't take much for the U.S. to say, look, we'll keep supplying you bombs and defensive rounds for your Iron Dome, but if you go for an all-out invasion, we're not going to support you anymore.
Yeah.
That's all it takes to get Israel to stop, because they don't have the money to do it themselves.
In those
to be fair, they
conversations,
just don't have the money.
Don't.
The economy is just too small. It's not because they don't want to have the money, or they're just they're just literally not capable of having enough money to fund this without America.
Yeah.
So in other words, America controls what happens, as usual.
Yeah.
If it's not America, it'd be someone else. It would be China or whoever. Russia.
That's a really good point. And that's where, a lot of Americans argue, well, why does America have to be the world police? Well, would you rather Putin? Would you rather China? All right, that's a really good point.
It's a golden rule.
So with the person with the gold makes the rules. What there was a rumor that Putin has body doubles and that he had cardiac arrest yesterday?
Sunday night.
Yeah, and now there's, who was it? It was the Sky News, I think. Sky News was reporting that via Telegram, Putin basically had a cardiac arrest in his bedroom. He had a table of food and drinks, apparently knocked it over. I think like a hotel cart almost of food and drinks. Knocked it over and was convulsing on the ground. His guards heard that, came in. Medical staff on site resuscitated him. I guess when you go cardiac, you die, and then they resuscitated him. Now, and then at the same time, rumors were coming out that when Putin goes to events, he has body doubles that go because he's so afraid of being assassinated. I guess the Kremlin's now laughing this off. None of these rumors are confirmed, but it does make you wonder if this is like an attempt to slip something in his food or whatever. But you have to look at it both ways. And remember, there are always three things, three stories. There's one side story, the other side story, and then there's the truth. And so, to some extent, if the Kremlin actually confirms this and then paints it as like an assassination attempt or whatever, you could actually, in a weird way, galvanize support for Putin. When you have a failed assassination attempt, people actually tend to rally and support. Like, imagine, as much as people hate Biden, imagine if there was an assassination attempt on the president and it was found out to be another country.
Yeah. It's not the person, it's the office. That's what people would get defensive of. Anybody that cares about their country, it's not the person, it's the office.
Oh,
like,
yeah.
We don't, like, obviously Joseph Biden is in the presidential seat, but we don't necessarily, like, Joseph Biden isn't the person we respect. It's the seat it's the office, it's the mantle that we respect.
Yeah, I mean, that's a great thing, analogy or just statement. I mean, look at, like, imagine if Mexico staged an attempted assassination on the presidential office. It'd be disaster.
Yeah.
I mean, everybody, I feel like, even though people might hate Biden, and there are going to be some people in the comments like, I wish they would, because that's just the YouTube comment section. But I do think the vast majority of Americans would start buying American flags again.
Yeah.
You'd actually galvanize the support. So that's one possibility, is that maybe there was an attempted assassination attempt or something like that. Although usually you don't get these sort of, trying to study, poisons and that. I mean, you can get like foxglove or some heart-related poisons, but usually you go for like nerve agents or things that basically shut your capability of breathing down. So going cardiac, it could have just been a related health issue.
Yeah.
And there have been rumors that he's been falling ill or showing him, like, appearing weaker. He's like 71 years old, so it's entirely possible. But it is interesting. I also don't know how all of a sudden I got to Putin. The cardiac story.
So you're saying, well, I'll get to the video of the hostages, but so you're saying one possibility. There's three sides to every truth, or to every story. Oh, yeah. One side is that it might have been an assassination attempt.
Right.
The other might have just been
illness.
He's getting old, and the truth could have been that
it never happened.
He found Prigozhin's coke
with the hand grenade pins in every line.
I think I don't know if you know this. The Kremlin confirmed this morning that he's fine.
Yeah,
Okay, yeah.
That he's fine, or that story never happened?
Everything is fine with him. This is just another complete hoax. And then they went on to describe the reports of body doubles as, quote, absurd and false.
So notice how they're saying the body doubles report is absurd and false. But they're not actually saying the cardiac story is absurd and false. They're just false. They're just saying he's fine.
He's fine, and this is a complete hoax. But, like, what's a hoax? The assassination or the health? Or
Yeah. So there could be something there. That's interesting wording there.
They didn't.
They're clearly saying the body double thing is a joke.
Yeah.
But don't worry, his health is fine. Okay, so was it last night or 2 nights ago? It's very interesting. I think we got to there because we were talking about, like, with Israel. If America's not the world police, what if it's Putin or whatever? That's how we got to that. So going back to Israel then, since clearly I get off on these tangential discussions, what's going on?
Yeah. So the two more hostages that were released. We still have over 200 hostages as far as we know, so this is just a drop in the bucket. But Christian, if you want to throw this on the screen, I have this muted just because the first half is silent anyway, and the second half is mostly censored. But this shows the two hostages. This is still in Palestine, so this is with Hamas around them.
Yeah, that green, the green bandana is sort of your, and the black uniform is very sort of the uniform of Hamas. But yeah, I mean, this is look at this. This is all for the show, by the way. Here's a drink, whatever. Look at her look inside of it. Like, what is this? I don't trust you. You see that? That's suspicion.
It's interesting that they picked those two people because they're probably the most frail and most fragile hostages of everybody.
Oh,
and
yeah.
if they, for whatever reason, like passed away in the custody of Hamas, then the headlines are Hamas kills two hostages, and then the war can escalate. So if you're Hamas, you're like, I don't want these people dying on my watch.
Oh, yeah.
Let's get them off.
Back up like 30 seconds if you can. Oh, yeah, look at that. See, that's perfect. But back up like that. Look at his face, or the Hamas guy. You can't see his face, obviously, but look at how he's leaning over like he cares.
Yes.
You see that? They picked the most empathetic Hamas guy. Like, if I look at his finger off the trigger like he's a professional or whatever,
he's like, he's opening up the
look at
snack
this.
for her, handing it to her.
They got the softest guy ever in Hamas. I don't even know if that's possible. If you could suggest that there's a soft person,
maybe it's just another hostage dressed up as Hamas.
Because like, how could you ever call like a terrorist organization like soft, right? But I mean, this is. I mean, let's call it what it is. It's brilliant marketing.
Yeah,
it is great marketing for Hamas, because what Hamas needs to do is go, we're not that bad, okay? Like that, and look at the destruction they've caused. if you just remove one thing, if you just remove that attack on Israel, you would not have had the destruction of the Gaza Strip. So call Israel's response whatever you want. You could agree with it. You could disagree with it. You could say they went too far. You could say they didn't do enough. You could whatever. You could say they should have used more diplomacy, whatever. Had it not been for the first strike on Israel here, which don't get me wrong, there have been plenty other aggressions. You know, people are like, well, they're evicting Palestinians. You know, the Israelis are evicting Palestinians from their homes. They're encroaching on land in the West Bank. You know, they're oppressing. You can make all those arguments. But just in the narrowed framework of if you just remove the attack by Hamas, the destruction of the Gaza Strip would not have happened, at least now, this time. So that's very clear. So this is very clearly Hamas's responsibility. And now this U-turn of, look, we're humans too, is very interesting. And I think it's part of their negotiations, because now what you have is there's this discussion about a 50 hostage release, which fell apart because Hamas wants fuel. Well, no, duh.
Yeah.
Like, if you don't have fuel, you can't turn the power on. You
Yep.
can't do anything. You can't run your radios. You can't, send emails. You can't send your telegrams,
Yeah.
which is your propaganda machine to some extent, right? I mean, there are, and you have to know this, but there are Telegram channels that are just purposefully dedicated to showing all of the Palestinian civilian injuries, and they're terrible, and the deaths and the destruction is just, it's so heartbreaking to see. But that is a form of propaganda. Well, if you destroy all of the capability to have cell service or internet or whatever, can't upload videos.
Yeah. That was the first thing
shuts
Russia
down.
tried to do for Ukraine was take out their comms towers and anything comms related, and that's where Starlink came in and kind of foiled a lot of what Putin was trying to do.
Yep. Yeah.
Last thing I want to show on this video, if we could throw this back on the screen. So like you said, a lot of good marketing. He even puts his arm kind of behind her here to lead her out. And they're saying, like, are you ready to go? And she's ready to go. But interesting to note, she did turn around and, like, shake his hand, which she didn't have to at this point. She's kind of free. So, I mean,
that's like the thank you, the final, like, I appreciate you doing this. It's that's human empathy of, like, look, I get you're fighting for your cause. Thank you for freeing me. And that's a big moment right there. Like, letting that sink in for a moment. Like, that's such a good observation, Mikey. That final turnaround, that did not have to happen. That is really incredible. I just want to see that here. Look at that. He wasn't even expecting that.
Yeah.
She was already holding someone else's hand, being guided away from the threat, and she stopped and went back.
Yeah,
and shook his hand.
but that's also what's that syndrome called?
Stockholm
Stockholm syndrome.
Yeah.
That's exactly what that is to some extent.
And you have to think that there has to be a little bit of the reverse going on, because although the terrorist organization is terrible and evil, they are still people. Yeah. And that man probably saw, oh, she's similar to my grandmother, or she's similar to my mother. And these hostages sit there like, we just want to go home. Like, we have kids and grandkids we want to take care of. They're probably verbally wearing the hostage, like the Hamas soldiers. They're wearing them down emotion, like, oh, these are just people too. Like, it's just an exchange. Like, let's just get this done.
Well, that's like the smart thing to do if you're ever a hostage, is you make your hostage taker love you. And, you have to, like not necessarily like sexually, but like you have to be nice and like relatable and like empathetic to them. Because if you're in there and you're doing the the Jason Bourne, which is just basically like say nothing or like F you, it's just gonna kill you. They get pleasure out of it too, right? Yeah. So like if you're ever a hostage, it's like, you got to say whatever you got to say to just get your
These are just people.
Like,
the organizations might be at war, but there's people behind these organizations that do care, and that they may not even be fighting because they want to, but because they feel like they have to, because it's a family or whatever, or a religious thing.
I mean, that's almost true of every war too. It's almost every war. I think you do get that, the human to human, like.
Yeah.
Anyway, all right.
Wait, were those both U.S. citizens?
No,
I think so.
No,
not
just
these
the first two were. These two
which were
there.
the other day.
Oh, okay. That's where I'm confused.
Yeah.
Okay. So, all right, what's next?
Well,
so
they are sending humanitarian aid.
Yes,
too.
the trucks went through, the 20 trucks.
20 trucks.
Okay.
I saw they were carrying supplies like medicine. I also saw they're carrying coffins.
Oh.
Which, that's sad. I don't know why you'd prioritize coffins over like diesel and water and stuff like that.
Well, so what's interesting is, I wonder, because I don't believe coffins are stackable like musical chairs, but coffins do have, I mean, they're kind of an ideal crate if you think about it, for possibly loading up with food and supplies.
Gotcha.
Like, instead of using pallets and plastic wrap that you're just going to throw away, ship. I don't know this, but I'm speculating. You could put food and medicine and AKs in the coffin. And you never know, man. You never know.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's a good point, though. I hadn't thought about that, where it's not just a waste of space or taking up space with something else. There's
it's
stuff
filled
in
up
it.
with something else. Yeah.
Okay.
So UN warning the Gaza operation could end tomorrow. This is the aid operation without more fuel. This is just part of the tense negotiation that's going on right now and has been for about the last 48 hours. And that's the concern that, look, without fuel, like you can't even run the hospitals anymore.
Yeah.
Which, by the way, that missile strike, I mean, the Wall Street Journal did a pretty good piece on it and showed multiple different angles, about 3 different angles on that rocket. At least the current consensus is that it is a rocket that misfired. Or misfired or failed or whatever. And remember, this struck a parking lot. And the reason that was such a big deal is because people were camping in that parking lot waiting to get facility access to the hospital. So either way you look at it, everybody involved in a conflict ultimately is responsible for the deaths of civilians, and that's why the quicker you can end conflicts, the better.
Yeah, and from what I found too, it came from Islamic Jihad, which is a separate entity from Hamas, even.
Yep. Yeah, that's another I believe also offshoot of the Egyptian Muslim Brotherhood. That's where Hamas came from as well. So really weird if you look back at the history of these groups, how they kind of started actually in Egypt, and it makes you wonder if these are groups that like they didn't make it in Egypt. I don't know. I'm just speculating. Like let's say you have your you're like, yo, we hate our Muslim Brotherhood in Egypt because we have no power. Let's go build our own base. Where are we going to go? Let's go to Gaza. And you build your base over there and you become a faction over there. So that's how you gain power and start gaining notoriety or whatever, which is what everybody's after.
Interesting enough, the New York Times admitted their error in the hospital reporting. They issued a public apology for the lack of reporting and the lack of facts that they used.
Really? Can you read that out?
This is on Politico.
Okay.
New York Times admits error in Gaza hospital report. The New York Times walked back its initial coverage on the explosion that killed hundreds of Palestinians at the Gaza Strip hospital last week, saying in an editor's note that the newspaper, quote, relied too heavily on claims made by Hamas militant group. Soon after a huge blast rocked the hospital on Tuesday, finger pointing over its source began. They talk about how other outlets reporting different things.
Yeah, I mean, this is wild. They're literally saying several outlets here: the Times, Reuters, the AP, and like the Times, we know there's a tilt, and honestly, all of them have some tilt. But Reuters and AP are supposed to be your news wire services that provide news to the other newspapers, so they can put their tilt on it. So to kind of think about it as like Reuters and AP, they're like your fact gatherers on the ground, and then they send the information to the NYT and the Wall Street Journal, CNN, Fox, and then they either just republish the story the way the AP wrote it. That's why often when you read a news article, it'll say per AP or whatever. They license the stories. This is how everybody seems to get the same stories, or they put their tilt on it. So Reuters and AP. Publishing also the Hamas viewpoint here, that's embarrassing.
Yeah,
that's embarrassing. And so I mean, like we said when we were first covering it, the truth always eventually comes out. And
I thought we said we would never know.
That's a good point. I think Mikey, you said that.
Yeah.
That is a possibility.
Yeah.
But eventually you get more facts. Let's put it that way. You may never truly know all of the details, but you get more facts because you get people who go on the ground and you see, okay, here's the depth of the crater and here's the direction it came from because you could see the blast or whatever. And so you do get more facts. And it is pretty wild to see how in the fog of war you could get information on all angles. And the reality is, will we ever truly always know? No. This could be spin too.
Kind of like Prigozhin, like really, like grenades on the plane.
Yeah, I guess that's the point. Is like you get more facts. But will you ever truly get the real truth? Probably not. I guess maybe that's the way to put it.
Probably official statements.
Yeah, that's a good point. Okay, fair. Okay, so maybe the truth is we'll never know with 100% certainty. We'll just know with slightly more information.
With some sigma notation margin of error.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, okay. All right, what's next?
Cool. Last one on Israel and Palestine. Obama actually had a message about this too. You remember that guy, right?
Who? What?
Obama.
The buck stops with me. That guy.
Yeah. So he has a statement here. I have it on my screen if you want to throw it up, Christian. But I'll just kind of give you the abridged version of this. So he talked about 17 days since since Hamas launched its horrific attack against Israel. He did mention that Israel has a right to defend its citizens and itself, and basically talked down on Hamas for the hostages and saying that he's hoping for the return of all the hostages. But he does make a note that even though we should support Israel, it's clear that how Israel prosecutes this fight against Hamas matters. So he mentioned too, Biden had talked about how they've made mistakes in the past, even though their allies had warned them about it. So he's kind of doubling down on that. And saying that it's an extremely difficult task. A lot of what he says, I think, is very, very accurate. War is tragic. Even the most carefully planned military operations put civilians at risk.
Correct.
So, like we talked about, like the leveling of Gaza, that's what they're trying to do, but they're not really trying to kill citizens.
Right. It happens.
There's going to be casualties.
It's just like the rocket misfire. It's like, the Israeli troops coming in, so you get the Islamic Jihad. It's like, we're going to defend our territory, shoot rockets. Oh, crap, one broke. I was reading, I don't know how true it is, but potentially as many as 20% of the rockets they fire misfire. And a lot of these are like homemade rockets too, where they're just using like fertilizer basically and sugar as like a catalyst, and they shove it in a tube, and these are like PVC tube rockets. It's kind of wild.
I've seen videos too, and again, I don't know how accurate this is, but this is from Hamas released videos of them going, look, we're going into the ground and taking out all these water pipes that the EU paid for and using them and repurposing them for rockets.
Wow.
So source is Hamas said they did that, and they have videos. It was like a propaganda video of them doing it.
Yeah.
So if it's a lie, it's like that lie kind of bit them in the butt, or it could be the truth.
I mean, I would imagine that if you're making homemade rockets, you'll take any kind of piping you can get your hands on, whether that's sprinkler lines, water lines from the EU, whether those are copper lines in a home. Probably not PEX. Yes, you can. That's the flex is a little too much.
What do you guys think on the rising minor strikes on U.S. bases around the Middle East? Because we've seen that. I just saw it on the news wire come across that the United States is seeing an increased attacks on U.S. military bases. Do you think it's...
But when you say minor attacks, we're not talking children. We're not talking about gold miners. You're talking about small attacks.
Like drone strikes, like attempted drone attacks.
Yeah, I mean, this is the hotbed of... Who is it? Dalio, who said the hot world or whatever, right? This is how the tension flows. Those attacks, remember, I think are getting more coverage now than ever because of what's going on. But those always happen. Our bases always get attacked in the Middle East. It's just a matter of how much are we actually responding to these.
And I guess a lot of it's coming from Iran is what we found.
Yeah, well, for sure. Source of instability over there. Okay, so then we've got Bitcoin. And also, by the way, looks like we do have an update here on the House Speaker election. Emmer leads as House Republicans meet to choose a nominee. So Tom Emmer of Minnesota, number 3 House Republican, emerged from a crowded field on Tuesday as he's the party's latest leading contender for Speaker after multiple closed-door votes. All right, very well. So little bit of progress. Imagine that in Congress. Although
progress,
nothing.
How many weeks have we been out without a speaker?
I don't even want to know.
It's been rough.
Okay, Bitcoin. So Bitcoin's like almost basically doubled this year.
To the moon?
Yeah, it's been going to the moon. So let's hear it.
Yeah, I mean, today I can recheck the numbers now, but when I checked about an hour ago, it was up 12% in the last 24 hours. In the last week, it was up over 20%, almost 30% last year, and then about like 80% in the past 1 year. Ethereum's up too. A lot of cryptocurrencies up, but Bitcoin especially. And this is, you probably know more about this than I do, but the potential ETF that's coming up has sprung a lot of demands. And even Reuters reported on this, and it's saying that Bitcoin shorts are getting squeezed.
Yep.
BlackRock is among several major U.S. financial firms with pending applications for ETFs. And then a quote I have from Reuters here is, speculation on their likely approval was fueled by BlackRock's iShares ETF listing on the website of clearinghouse DTCC. It was unclear when or why the iShares ETF was added to the DTCC list. They and BlackRock did not immediately respond to requests for comment per Reuters. And anticipation also grew after reports this month, including from Reuters, that the SEC won't appeal a court ruling that it had been wrong to reject an ETF application from crypto firm Grayscale Investments. On Monday, the court formalized its ruling, sending the application back to the SEC for review.
Yeah, what I think is so fascinating is I think the SEC has tried to do everything they can to delay making any kind of, creating any kind of regulatory environment around Bitcoin. And that's because they're probably just waiting for Congress to tell them exactly what to do. Who's going to take control? Is it the SEC? Is it the Commodities Future Trading Commission? Who is it? The problem you have here is the longer it takes to get regulation, the more you get FTXs and Voyagers and BlockFis and these disasters, and the more you get these speculative bubbles. This is good. I don't think anybody should look at this Bitcoin ETF and think that it's a bad thing. I think this is fantastic. I think it will. This is my speculation, but my speculation is you'll probably get an initial surge of adoption in these ETFs, and along with a short squeeze, you're going to get an initial price rise. I probably wouldn't buy Bitcoin right off the back of this sort of ETF stuff. I think the perfect time to probably buy Bitcoin, which trades like a risk asset, is right basically when rates start getting cut. And that's probably true of all risk assets, whether it's like Tesla or Bitcoin or whatever. It's clearly a risk asset. I want to hear your guys' opinion, but that's my take, is probably when the best time is. And I think you have time between now, when the ETF hype fades, and when rates start getting cut, to actually get into BTC. Because when you have hype and shorts getting squeezed, you create a temporary overvaluation. And I'm not here to say that, oh, it's going to crash or this, that, or whatever, but you probably want to get, because this is not official yet. It's just looking like it's coming. You'll get the official announcement. Then what you're going to get is a lot of news and data about the initial inflows. How many millions of dollars are going into these ETFs? How many more ETFs are going to get greenlit? And I think you'll kind of get like a bleed out of attention on this. But over time, as more and more investors are like, great, I don't have to worry about a hardware wallet. I don't have to worry about, a BlockFi going bankrupt or whatever. I can now get safe access to Bitcoin. Rates are starting to get cut. I want more exposure to this risk asset. You get a slow increase of diversification in people's portfolio to crypto, especially after the total failure of the 60-40 portfolio over the last year, stocks and bonds. Complete wreck. People are like, oh, you're diversified if you're 60-40. Bull crap, it did nothing for you this last year. You were a double loser if you were 60-40. So now I think people want to be exposed to, okay, I'm not going to be that concentrated anymore in just stocks or bonds. I need my exposure to, maybe it's crypto, maybe it's real estate, which reminds me, we have a November 1st, a deadline for investing in HouseHack. Go to househack.com, my real estate startup, learn all about it, read the offering circular, because this video can't be a solicitation, but househack.com has the offering circular. Read about investing in HouseHack. The deadline to invest for 2023 is November 1st, 11:59 p.m., so go check that out. What do you guys think?
I'm trying to think if Bitcoin, how do you even, obviously as a portfolio manager yourself, how do you even analyze this with the thesis of pricing power? Does Bitcoin have pricing power? Can you argue for or against pricing power with Bitcoin?
I think you can argue it as Bitcoin more of a hedge. So you could look at it as like
we said that in 2021.
No. I didn't say inflation hedge. I think you can look at it as like a diversifier look, I think it's. But the point that I'm making is you can't say that I think a commodity or whatever Bitcoin is really something that has pricing power, because it is something that you set up as a diversifier. So
Gotcha.
What is it a diversifier from? It's not a diversifier from risk. It's a multiplier to risk. But is it potentially a diversifier to a crash in consumer staples, or staples go down, maybe your risk assets go up? Is it a diversifier to
the dollar,
to currencies? Yeah. Yes, yeah, absolutely. So not maybe even necessarily just the dollar, but maybe you're invested in your own currency at home because you have a lot of euros in your bank account. You're like, I want to diversify away from euros, so I'm going to put my money into BTC. So I think if you're looking at it from, which is your question, like how do you put it into a pricing power portfolio? I think you put it into the percentage that's like the hedge basket.
Gotcha, yeah.
And you're not necessarily hedging pricing power stocks, which could be risk asset stocks, because it's like an amplifier of that. You're hedging something else.
Yeah.
Currency risk.
I think it'd be really advantageous for...
not inflation, though. That didn't work.
No, that did not work. Non-U.S. investors.
100%.
If you're wanting exposure to a regulated currency that's not your own, or you don't necessarily want the dollar, it seems like an okay alternative, something to look at.
Yeah, and I wouldn't. I do think the near-term hype cycle has some risk to slowing down. Sure. But here's the thing: when we get to peak rates and the Fed starts relaxing, Bitcoin will do just as well as risk assets.
How does this affect the balance sheets of companies that like Tesla has a handful of millions of dollars in Bitcoin?
They still have a little bit.
They didn't sell
they didn't sell all of it out. Yeah. I mean, obviously it's good. I mean, the price go up.
Yeah.
You know, it's a good thing.
Does Tesla dump now? Like if price go up, or do you think they use it as like a currency hedge too? To like, what do they do with it?
Tesla holding Bitcoin is Elon being Elon. You know, it's like his version of marketing. So I don't know. I also don't know that it matters so much. I think that what matters is that because like Bitcoin go up, Tesla stock go up. Those are not necessarily because, you know, Tesla stock doesn't necessarily go up because Bitcoin's going up. It's just when Bitcoin's going up, it's going to be because risk assets are going up, and Tesla is a risk asset. Interest or stocks that are growth companies are risk assets. Growth companies benefit from lower interest rates. The best time to launch a Bitcoin ETF is when interest rates peak. That might be right now.
That might be right now.
Oh boy. No. That's interesting. You got any thoughts, Mikey?
Yeah, short term there could be risk, like you said, to the hype with all this stuff happening. Like, don't. I'm not your guys' financial advisor or investment advisor, but when things kind of get hyped up because of rumors and things like that, I know they say buy the rumor, sell the news, but that usually works if you're pretty early on the rumor too. Yeah. With that said, Bitcoin tends to have these 4-year cycles that we've seen before too. And I think the best time in general to buy Bitcoin or cryptocurrency in general is when it's not sexy and when people aren't talking about it, when people are going back to saying this is a scam, this will never work.
Yep.
That's the time. So these last couple of years where nothing's really happened, that's the time.
Yeah.
As soon as you're seeing it on the news and you're getting calls from like your grandparents and your aunts and uncles going like, you should buy Bitcoin, I bought this sell. That's the time to sell.
Yeah, that's so funny. I mean, I feel, first of all, I think you're 100% right. Second of all, I keep telling myself, you know, I was talking to somebody just the other day about Tesla. They're like, oh, so, you know, if you take a Tesla on a road trip, what, do you have to probably stop and charge for like 4 hours every so often, right? And I'm like, you mean like 30 minutes and you're like 80% nearly? And they're like, what? It's gotten that fast. People have no freaking idea how great these Teslas are. And what I tell myself is I sell Tesla stock when everybody says Teslas are great and I like charging's great. That's when you sell. You don't sell Tesla stock before you get this mainstream adoption of EVs because you're not there yet. It's the same thing what you're saying with Bitcoin. When everybody's talking about it, that's when you're near peak.
Yeah, it's actually a good point. The DTCC.com website just went down because so many people are going to check.
Wow. That's a big organization.
I think that's my presumption of why it would be down is because they're being swarmed by inquiries, but DTCC.com is down.
Or they're getting DDoSed.
True.
You know about this DDoSing. What's going on here?
Heard of this? Yeah, well, DDoS.
Handshake, SSL handshake failed. Cloudflare says LA's working, browser working, host error.
So this is a certificate issue between the Edge, which is Cloudflare, and the Origin web server. Basically, their SSL certificates probably expired or invalidated for some reason, and they haven't put it back up yet.
Wow.
Can you try forcing it over HTTP? Do HTTP:// and then DTCC's website.
With the S?
Without the S.
Without the S?
Yeah.
Okay.
Still nothing.
Still nothing.
DTCC.com.
Because that way, at least you'll bypass security.
Cite not secure. Yeah. So I'm going to continue to cite.
Yeah.
Pinwheel. Wow.
Yeah. So a DDoS, that has like a malicious implication. Like a DOS is when something gets taken down because one person sends a bunch of requests over to the server and basically shuts it down. A DDoS is a distributed denial of service. So it's when either me and McKay and all of our friends are attacking the same source, or if I'm using a botnet or something like that. In this case, it basically works just like a DDoS. It's everybody around the world's trying to connect at the same exact time, and that's overwhelming the server, and it's just shutting down going, I can't handle this.
Amazing.
So is it like if you had an error, is it malicious, or do you think a lot of people are just curious?
It's probably the latter. Yeah. People are all just trying to connect, and it's overwhelming the server.
Well, you have to remember, the DTCC is a website that is for clearing brokerages, clearing firms. How many freaking clearing firms are there in the country? Not that many.
At least two.
At least two? Yeah.
Two.
Okay. So maybe like a few dozen, right? So like if there are a few dozen clearing firms that need the services of the DTCC, how often does their website get visited? You know, it's been getting visited by us a lot, not because of Bitcoin, but other things. But it's very rare that somebody's like, oh, I'm waking up and I want to be a customer of the DTCC.
Yeah.
Now everybody's like, DTCC.com. The entire Bitcoin and crypto community, you know, everybody wants to see it there.
I wonder if because of that, people have found vulnerabilities in the website because it is not a public-facing website that Maybe it is a malicious. I don't know.
Generally, the
think
public-facing part of the website is going to be totally separate from the back-end stuff that happens, which is why, like, I'm sure these people are still able to clear these transactions just fine.
100%.
It's just you can't visit
the
the
stock
website.
market would be halted right now.
Yeah.
They clear like 70+% of stock market transactions. Like when you trade, I guarantee it, your trades have gone through them.
Yeah.
No, the stock market would be shut down right now if
Yeah.
the DTCC servers were actually failing. So I think it's what you said. It's this volume.
Yeah.
It's actually
In
kinda
other
funny.
words, Apple just announced an online event called Scary Fast planned out for October 30th. Any idea what it could be?
Scary fast or fast?
Scary Fast. October 30th. They just announced it. What would that be? You're invited to watch a special Apple event online. Tune into apple.com on October 30th at 5 p.m.
Scary fast.
That's like 8 p.m. East Coast time. Like, that's late for an event.
Apple's next special event will take place on the night of October 30th with Scary Fast presentation to include Mac updates, it says.
That's it?
Yeah,
Oh,
so
so
it's the
spooky.
Mac event. Okay, so
Oh.
it could be a new MacBook Pro. Maybe it's the M3.
Oh, yeah,
'cause
new Macs.
After you just bought the M2 laptop, obviously the next thing that's
You
going to
have
happen
to.
is they'll release the M3.
Yeah.
I have the M1, and I still love this thing, man. These chips have been the best they've ever released.
Are you applauding Apple?
I
You
hate to
green
admit
texter?
it, yeah. But if Android made a decent laptop, maybe I'd give it a shot.
What, the Chromebooks ain't working for you anymore?
Oh, dude, those are a joke, man. It's like a more complicated tablet. Those things are a joke.
So, do you have, we have earnings today.
I gotta go.
You got to go.
I gotta go to a mommy moon. That's because
Wow.
these babies are due like any day now. We have twins coming via surrogate, so I'm taking Lauren on a little wine tour.
Nice.
And it was a surprised her. And
You have surprised her, or you're going to surprise
I already
her?
surprised her last night, so she could
Gotcha.
get ready. Girls don't like last minute surprises, as we've learned. Anyway, she's very excited, and I'll be gone for the next 30 hours, and we'll see you tomorrow.
All right, we'll hold the fort down.
You're
Yeah,
supposed to
alright.
just sip the wine and taste it. You're not supposed to actually chug it and get drunk.
Yeah.
Right.
Yes, Kevin.
But
Right.
I don't know if they can stop you if you decide to do the latter.
With that said, even though I'm a licensed financial advisor, licensed real estate broker, and becoming a stockbroker, this video is neither personalized financial or real estate advice for you. It is not tax, legal, or otherwise a personalized advice tailored to you. This video provides generalized perspective. We need some music, Christian. This is a little too boring without the music. Any third-party content I show should not be deemed endorsed by any of us. This video is not and shall never be deemed reasonably sufficient information for the purposes of evaluating a security or investment decision. Any links or promoted products are paid for sponsorships. StreamYard, go to medkevin.com/StreamYard. Look at that. Send me a coffee mug too. How great is that? Thanks so much for watching. We'll see you in the next one.